what advice would you give to a new carer coming into a caring role?
Don't.
Oh dear.
I would say get yourself registered as a carer first properly with Carers Trust and with your GP particularly, so they know you're a carer, because that gives you a lot of power and rights the minute you do that, and all sorts of benefits, especially if your GP is a very carer aware practice, which some of them are. That can be very useful. And also be prepared. Don't wait till your crisis happens. Learn your way around the health and social care system, things like continuing healthcare. Don't wait until the crisis hits you. It's too late then.
Totally agree with you, Martin.
Yeah.
In fact, sorry, Julie. I'm in this question. I've written down a list of things that I think are important, and at the risk of sounding just as if I'm reading it out, which I am. The points I considered were, first of all, recognise that you are a carer, and then recognise how important you are to your loved one, and then your loved one's probably going to suffer confusion or be changed from their normal lifestyle that you're familiar with. So try to be empathetic and see the world from their chair and act accordingly. Don't blame them for things that they wouldn't do when they were in their normal life prior to being in need of care. And then get help. Get help as soon as you feel the situation could overwhelm you. But then again, get help anyway and prepare for the time when it overwhelms you. And then find out where that help can be found. And in my particular case, with the Carers Trust, although I'm sure there are other good department stores available that sell it. But they helped me find out where and what help you can get. They were the things that I found I would give advice to other new incoming carers. And I'm sure there's a lot more advice you can give.
I agree with both of you on that. I think it's a bit like getting things in order, getting your ducks in a row. And it's like Martin said, getting your name on your loved one's record at the doctor so that you can make appointments easier and they know what's going on, and you're registered, exactly as you said about registered. But things like, ask sort of people like Citizen Advice, Carers Trust for what services can you access. And it could be just stuff like getting a disabled badge. You know, you have to jump through hoops for certain things, and everything's a form, everything's a formality. But there's little things like that can make your life a lot easier to look after your loved one. But also things like powers of attorney. And, you know, nobody likes talking about money and nobody really likes talking about death. But in a practical world, if you get those things sorted earlier in the process, and I know it's really awful, but trying to have that discussion. I mean, we didn't have, like, I don't know if it's still called a DNR, the do not resuscitate stuff, in play with my mum until she had a couple of hospital visits. But then one of them, and it was out of the blue, and it wasn't such a serious visit. They just said, has she got a DNR? And I kind of said, well, we're not ready for that yet. We haven't. And I think it panicked me because my head didn't feel like my mum was that ill, because it's really hard to accept that the person that's been your rock is getting weaker, and, you know, you're losing them. We did then get it sorted in hindsight with involvement, obviously, from mum. Mum was very, basically the heart of every decision. But I think it's really hard because you kind of have to put a practical head on of what do we need to do? What kind of documentation do we need? Do we need to get on the radar with any hospices? Do we need any care? And I also think from a carer's point of view, when somebody offers help, it's really hard to accept it, but do accept it, because if somebody says, I'll come and sit with your loved one for 2 hours, don't feel guilty if they're offering. Accept it and use that 2 hours to go for a walk or go and see a friend and go for a coffee, because you don't realize how much you need those little windows of and it could just be a half an hour going for a walk. It's just magic, and it does rejuvenate your own energy to support the person. I think people should really think carefully, and as you both sort of said, you kind of do sometimes a bit fall into it because you don't know anything different, because you love them and you don't want strangers looking after them in a blunt way. But at the same time, you have to recognize what you can realistically do. But get all the help you can. If talk to your council, talk to Citizens Advice, talk to the Carers Trust, and get help. Just get information as early as possible so that you're prepared for these things, because, as you say, most of us deal with it at the point of crisis, and it's more of a gut reaction a lot of the time. And we don't, a lot of people didn't even know you could have a carer's allowance. But like you say, once you're at a state pension age, it's almost to say, you've got a pension now, you don't need that. Where does that come from? But I think it's a difficult one. I mean, I'd do it all again in the blink of an eye. I wouldn't change a thing. I would not change a thing. And I was incredibly blessed that in the circumstances and the COVID, I was able to sort of still be everything I wanted to be for both my parents, because sadly my father passed away not long after my mum. But I think you've got to just prepare yourself, that you've got to have little breaks.